just introduce ourselves very briefly. So I'm the one with the beard, in case you couldn't quite make out which one I was. So I'm Paul. I'm the head of volunteer products at the British Red Cross.
Hi all, I'm Lotte. I work with Paul, or he's my boss, and I'm the Assemble product owner, which is the volunteer management system, and I'm the one in the middle with the dog, because apparently I can't take a picture without my dog, so there we go.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zipporah Kerubo. I work for the Kenya Red Cross. I'm in charge of volunteerism and membership management. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So that's who we are. What we wanted to start with is we'd like you to get lots out of this session as well. So we've tried to design this in a way where you come away with something that kind of describes where you are in your journey when it comes to, well, I'll say digital transformation, but what we really mean here and what we'll kind of focus on a little bit is a volunteer management system. We'll use that as a bit of a case study, but you can replace that with any digital product. It's just that's the one that we'll reference today. So we want you to kind of come away understanding where you might be in your journey with a volunteer management system, and also what you'd like to do next. So where others might be maybe a little further along, you can get some ideas, but this should help give you some kind of next steps. We also want to share all of our mistakes, maybe not all of them. We've only got an hour and a half. But we want to share our learnings from where our journey, we've been on for the last 3 years. This takes time. So we've got some lessons that we'd like to share with you all, that we don't want you to the traps that we don't want you to fall into. And also, not just us, but maybe some of your colleagues as well. Who else can help you in your journey? And then any hints and tips that you might pick up along the way. So hopefully you come away from this session armed with some really good things to kind of help take you forwards, or some ideas and as to what to do next. That's a lot of words. I'm not going to read through all of that, but there are some things to kind of pick out. And I've made some notes this morning because as I've been hearing other people speak in other sessions, I wanted to kind of frame this a little bit maybe. So the first thing is, I have a little bit of a problem with the word innovation. And that problem is that to make innovation happen, there's so much hard work that happens in the background. It's almost invisible. And I think we need to acknowledge that sometimes for innovation to happen, people need to do a lot of behind the scenes work. And we want to present some of that stuff today. Innovation can't just happen magically. This isn't Hogwarts. We have to put in an awful lot of work, groundwork, in order to make this a reality. We also have to find the time. Like Ahmed was saying at the beginning, we have to take off our operational hats, and we have to find the right time to think about tomorrow and to think about what innovations we will need to support us tomorrow. This session we're running here is running concurrently on Zoom and on YouTube as well. It's a bit of an experiment, so I would like you all to kind of enter into the spirit of this session with experimentation in mind, finding new ideas and so on. And the last thing is, we've come a long way from the UK to be here. This isn't just about this session. We're around for the rest of today and tomorrow. Come and find us, come and talk to us. We'll make sure you have our contact details. There's lots and lots of things that we like to talk about. We won't get chance today, but this shouldn't just be it. This is the start of our relationship. That's a beautiful way to end that slide, I think. Out of all those words, 3 things that we want to focus on. We want to look at how we connect volunteers using technology. We want to look at the common barriers that we face when we are implementing technology. And we want to talk about what we believe are our essential ingredients to taking forwards digital products. So when we start with how we connect volunteers, just reflecting back on Strategy 2030 about investing in experimenting and emerging technology skills. And this session, I think, really helps kind of line to that, really brings some of that to life, but also to kind of bring some of this to life as well. We're going to hear from a few different people now about what digital means for the Red Cross and where it's kind of really taking some shape in our national societies. So can I invite you, Frank, to join us first?
Thank you very much for this inspiring introduction. And following this, it's not easy to come in. But I'm very happy to be here. For those who don't know me, I'm Frank Moorhauer. I'm the director of the National Society Development Services Department, quite a mouthful, at the IFRC. I spare you with spelling out what IFRC means. I guess you all know it. And I'm pretty happy to be here and give you some of my own reflections on this, on innovation, volunteering, volunteer management, digitalization, and all these things. And this is also where we are coming to the core business of the Federation, which is around volunteering, national society development, coordinating of national societies. And it's great to see here British Red Cross, Kenyan Red Cross also gives us some examples, some other national societies who are already ahead of the curve on digital volunteer management systems. And what is our role as Federation? What are we doing here? How do we connect these dots? And how to make sure that these things are going forward? One of the things which I think is always important, one of the basics, and I'm not saying that this has been lost here anywhere, but I think we always need to reconnect this. We're talking about a tool which helps us for volunteering. It's not replacing volunteering, it's not replacing the normal volunteer management, it's not replacing about the contact with volunteers, it's not replacing about the role of volunteers. It's just a tool to make it easier for us in the 23rd century. No, we're not in the 23rd century. In 2023, to make this happen and also give us some opportunities. We are always talking about the digital volunteering. So I think this is an opportunity we have not really reflected upon. What does this mean, digital volunteering, in certain circumstances? I was recently at a meeting around migration, and I think, our support along the migratory rules and how do we actually work with volunteers on these areas, on these service points which we are establishing and everything, and how in between. So the digital volunteering is for sure one of the key things. I see also the big advantage of just getting data. If we are in this volunteering world, having the database, it's interesting. I reveal now about my existence, the long existence in this movement. When I started, we were talking about 100 million volunteers in the Red Cross movement. Dropped down then drastically to 10 million. Then we are somewhere now around 16 million. We don't know really how much it is. And I think volunteer data systems will help us to identify just the simple question about how many volunteers we have, but also knowing centrally on data sets what the skills of these volunteers are. Where do we need to get different volunteers with different skills? How can we use volunteers across the board, because we have volunteers with certain skills over there which can be useful over there. But also to create systems which are two ways. We're talking about volunteer engagement, volunteer led programs. How can these systems be enabling volunteers to really also ensure that volunteers have ideas that what they found in their communities they would like to do and use these volunteer systems. So I think there's a lot of potential in this data volunteering management systems. There are also some challenges. I think this is always the case, but we should never be driven by the challenges or the risks. We should always be driven by the opportunities. One of them is for sure, and especially I guess for the Europeans, but also I guess for other, is the data protection. Are we set up to be really able to have these challenges of data protection in place. I know that, for instance, in my own country, in Germany, smaller institutions are struggling with the data protection systems, and they rather not even step into this direction. So how can we make sure that the data protection is very well considered here? And the second thing, the second challenge and risk, I think, it is, are these things sustainable? You know, how long does it take to set it up? What is the transition? What is the policy which we're having in place and the strategy we're having in place, so that when we are implementing these systems, we're getting smooth and they get also sustainable and not somewhere stuck halfway, because the volunteer who has been volunteering to set this up has decided to go to Greenpeace or MSF or whatsoever, and we are stuck there. So how do we do this? We as a federation at secretariat level, and he's hiding there in the corner actually, Ajmal is doing this together with our digital transformation team. We are working on about finding the right system or systems for national societies, and how can we roll out these systems, how can we coordinate systems like from the British Red Cross, from the Spanish Red Cross. There are some good systems in there, and how can we make them available, connect, and also then ensure the sustainability. That is very much due to my heart, the sustainability of these systems, and that we're not getting stuck there. So I will stay here the whole session. I'm really interested in this. This is really dear to my heart, volunteering and innovation and digitalization. I hope to learn lots. I think I've been far over my time, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So leading on from that and just talking about digital platforms, I'm going to share with you a little bit of a case study that we think is really relevant to this. So one of our services a few months ago at the British Red Cross, they got a request for support with an asylum hotel in southwest England. There are around 470 asylum seekers, and the real concern was that they hadn't had any medical support. They hadn't been supported at all, hadn't been signposted. So we were then called in to support them. Now that's not a rare situation for us. We've done a lot of support with asylum hotels. What was rare was that the way it was set up. Now, we are the volunteer product team, so often when events and things are set up, we're the first people to hear about it because we have to do it. What was interesting about this is that we didn't find out about this request at all until an event had already been set up online, slots had already been put out, volunteers had already been invited, those slots were already full, and some of those events had already taken place. Now, those events were essentially sending volunteers to the hotel, 8 different slots, to give them medical advice, signpost, things like that. And what was really special for us is that we have now managed to get the volunteer management system that we run to that point where the services were able to initiate we need to set up an event. Let's use the volunteer management system. Let's get the volunteers, invited. And so the fact that we'd only heard about it at the very end was quite interesting. What was also interesting was through that, when I spoke to the service that had set it up, and it was only 2 people that had set this event up, and it had gone out to about 30 volunteers were offered to help, was that the volunteers that came onto that session, or those slots, were volunteers who had never actually volunteered before, because a lot of the requests that we put out are very time sensitive, and a lot of those volunteers they don't have that time. Some of them are professional, they're time poor. So the way that this had been set up was that they had slots that they could fill. They knew, okay, I can do 6 hours a week, I'll support there, fantastic. I'll put my name down, I'll go and support, brilliant. And also through the volunteer management system, those volunteers were able to put their activities, so that's automatically puts their activity through their dashboard, which is amazing. So volunteers now can see, I volunteered 20 hours that month, that's fantastic. Their line managers can see that. We can see that feeds into this kind of rewards, and recognition that we feel that that's lacking with our volunteers. So that was a really successful case study for us. I think it's finished now. They had full slots, all the support was offered, and that's a real winning case study for us. So a lot of that was down to the fact that the volunteer management system that we have worked tirelessly to get where it is really have the trust now of the services and the volunteers alike. So thank you.
Okay, I'll try and talk as fast as my colleagues. Yes, so for the Kenya Red Cross case study, basically we introduced the volunteer and membership management system last year. This is after very, very many challenges of data. We never used to have proper data. We only used to have name, email, phone number, and probably the county. So what we decided to do is get our volunteers, get their challenges and highlights, then develop a tool that is fit for them so that it's cascaded all the way to our counties. So basically the volunteer and membership management system was developed by our volunteers, but with support from the IFRC, Ajmal, thank you so much, and IFRC here in Nairobi. So what happens in the feature that we have for the volunteer membership management system, we have things like clocking of hours for our volunteers, we have recognition and retention strategies, we have integration, which used to be a very big challenge, where you find that programs for Kenya Red Cross really don't fit our volunteers, or our volunteers won't get opportunities to implement the different programmings that we have. We also have learning sessions for our volunteers, so they can come and do dissemination, they can come and do first aid. We are also trying to put a feature where there is mentorship and leadership programs for our volunteers. Rotation for our volunteers. I don't know if your other national societies have this, but in Kenya Red Cross, you can't have a volunteer for over 6 months because it goes onto the labor laws. So how do we ensure that we do proper retention and ensure that our 260,000 volunteers have an equal opportunity? Of course, there are challenges like professional volunteers, where we have life members who are working on a day-to-day. How do we ensure that we tap into them? And I was very happy when my colleague from Uganda said that we're trying to also partner with other organizations to see how we can tailor make products that they'll feel they'll want to come back and support the society. Our biggest challenge is last year we rolled this out to our 47 counties in the 8 regions, whereby we ensure that all our admins and our county coordinators are super admins for the system, where they can migrate our data from Excel spreadsheets to the system. But it's taking quite time because of course, technology adaptation. We're still at 20,000 out of 260,000. The challenges with data protection. You'll find after every 3 years, the Kenya Red Cross holds elections. So it's a very competitive process for people to come onto governance. So how are we entrusting the people who are king in data and not manipulating the data? Solutions that we are working towards is to ensuring that we have mandatory integration. So how are all programs at the headquarters, how are they integrated into the systems, whereby if you want to select volunteers, you select them through the systems. So it will enhance volunteer uptake and registration through the VMMS. How do we ensure we get proper clocking so that whenever we do like recognition or volunteer awards, we are awarding the proper people who actually participated into our activities? How do we streamline our documentation and reporting, and also payment and financials and accountability? So it's a whole shebang, but yeah, it's all worth it. So thank you for your time. Over to you.
Thank you. Excellent use of the word shebang. Love that. So this is about, if you haven't decided already, why you should move towards more digital and how important it is. Certainly a volunteer management system we've found now is a foundation, and we're seeing, like Lotte was explaining, lots of activity evolving from this. But a little reminder, the data migration reminder of the amount of effort some of this stuff takes, and the amount of blood, sweat and tears, I think Carla described it as, but the amount of almost non-innovation work that it takes to get there, I think as well, those case studies really kind of re-emphasize that point. So, we're going to stop talking at you for a little while. This is where chaos starts, okay, but bear with us, we'll try and manage this the best we can. So just going back briefly, this is the session here. We want to talk about two things. We're going to talk about personas and our online colleagues. I'm not sure how many there are. I'm imagining thousands of people are all logged in looking at this. So we want to look at personas. That will be our online sessions. And here in the room, we're going to talk about the barriers to implementing digital change. Again, we're going to focus on a volunteer management system as a common example. I think that's going to be helpful. But here in the room, we're going to facilitate this session. We're going to have some post-it notes, and we're going to get you to stand up and do all sorts of crazy things. Whereas online, they're going to talk about personas. So they're talking about the users of a volunteer management system, who they are, what kinds of volunteers we have. So we're going to split a little for about 20 minutes. I just wanted to introduce our 4 personas to the room. I know we're not going to be talking about them. A lot of people, I think, I've been speaking to asking GPT to give them various bits and pieces of information. I asked my daughter to create us 4 personas, so I asked Elsie. Elsie is 8, and she created these 4 personas for us. These are the ones that they're going to go through online. Whereas in the room here, we're going to talk about the implementation timeline. We're going to find where you are and what that means and what you can do next. So I'm going to leave our YouTube moderators to moderate. I am hoping, with my fingers crossed, that my team back in the UK, Neve, Kieran, Laura Jane, you've all got your rooms ready, set up, and your slides. Excellent, thank you team. And we're going to stay in the room off microphone so we don't interrupt them. And we're going to go through this. I might have to do a bit of shouting, so apologies in advance. Thank you.
Hello, Breakout Room Online. Can everyone hear us okay? The room can't hear us, can they?
The room cannot hear us, and Kieran, we can hear you.
Brilliant. Given the numbers, we've decided that we're going to just do, instead of using the breakout rooms, Tamoy, we're just going to stay in this room and go through it, and then have a bit of an informal discussion.
She's the only speaker.
Good morning. I hope you can hear me now. So we are now on the online sessions. We want to interact. Please, if you have all the questions. I hope you can hear me now. So we are on the Okay, so keep the questions coming in. We have a team who's going to respond on time and ensure that you have a fun interaction. Right. Okay, so what's happening on the screen is we are defining the personas. So, for example, I've only recently heard about personas. What are they? So basically, these are fictional descriptions of our users or customers. They're usually based on research or data to capture the characteristics, needs, goals, behaviors, and motivations. So our personas usually provide a deeper understanding that ensures that we make proper decisions. Yeah, so we have the 4 personas. We would like you to then choose a persona, then interact and ask questions. So here are the 4 personas. They're very detailed. So the first one says, I want to do this and I'll work with you. And the second, I want to do this, but I don't have skills. The third persona says, I want to do this, but I don't have the access. And the fourth persona says, I don't want to do this. So I'll repeat the personas. I want to do this and I'll work with you. I want to do this, but I don't have the skills. Then the third persona says, I want to do this, but I don't have the access. And the fourth persona completely doesn't want to do this. So this is usually the personas that we have when we want to develop a technology or we want to streamline or work with the technology that has been there. So how do we offer proper solutions to this? Any questions so far? Thank you so much. We have a question from Tariq. I want to do this and I want to work with you. Thank you so much, Tariq. So the first step for us to work with you will ensure we onboard you and get a proper dissemination and get your skills so that we align you with the proper skill that you like to be capacity built on or implement on. So we'll both talk and respond under the chat box. So our team will be responding for further processes of onboarding. So,
nobody has thought about or considered this as a way of progressing. That's great. I'm going to move us to one, which is we're trying to get a business.
okay, any more questions? Keep them coming.
Can I just ask
Okay, so I'll probably give answers to the situations of the 4 scenarios. So, for example, Tariq said, I want to do this and I'll work with you. So definitely we'll also respond even throughout the 4th persona where they says, I don't want to work with you. We'll still want to understand their perception and their context and try to engage them further to give solutions or provide solutions to them so that they can be able to join and get to be coordinated according to whatever they feel. So, for example, working with us definitely will take you through the onboarding. I don't have skills, we'll take you through the onboarding and make sure you get proper training. Access, you don't have access, we'll also make sure that we can support for you to get access. We usually have local branches that support. I don't want to do this. Like I said, we'll make sure you understand what the Red Cross is about, our activities, and then slowly make sure you join or you give us solutions for the joining. Okay. So we do have some questions. What has your experience with the different personas and have you used them before? And probably here is where you can give us your stories or your case studies of this particular question. The second question is, how well do you know your volunteer community? Do you know who they are? We usually say volunteers are community-based. They're local, they understand their communities. So do we know our volunteer communities? Then do you think there are any groups of volunteers who are underrepresented? This is a very important question where we need to include people living with disabilities, people who are marginalized. So these are very thought-provoking questions for you guys to have a look and give us your case studies according to your different contexts. Other questions actually have 9 questions. So the other one is, do you have any preferred methods or techniques for developing personas? Do you always encounter any difficulties when communicating with these certain personas or groups? So what other personas have you defined and how much detail have you gone to? The other questions are,
So I'll just pick a few. So we've got Nigerian Red Cross, we've got the Turkish Red Cross, Swedish again, I didn't mention in between, British Red Cross, great, Kenya Red Cross, French Red Cross, so yeah, quite a few. Anybody
they
share your experiences and where you see yourselves?
All right. There are more other questions streaming in. The next question is, so how often do you examine your different users or customers? Sorry about that. How often do you examine your different users or customers? This is basically when you launching probably a new feature on the system. Before you launch it for implementation, how do you usually examine your users and customer? Do they deem it fit? How do you know you have identified all the relevant stakeholders, groups, or personas? So before anything, I think there needs to be a participatory approach. So how often do you map out your stakeholders, your partners, and the different personas so that we get tailor-fit, custom-made system or a feature for this? Yeah, so I think those are all the 9 questions that we have for us. We need to just examine ourselves, go back to probably drawing boards, ensure that all these have been highlighted before launching or featuring a new product into the volunteer management system. Even if it's not through the system, how often do we even do this in our communities? So it is very integral for us to ensure that this has been defined before doing anything, especially with engagement for our volunteers in the communities. Our professional volunteers are generally just other volunteers.
put their deployment sheets in the system, which will calculate the number of days worked and how much we facilitate them in terms of incentive. We are trying to, we are hitting a snag where the technicians are working around the clock, because if we are, for example, facilitating with 300,000 and you are getting it through your mobile money, how do we configure in the mobile money charges? That is something the technicians are still trying to work around the clock. Now, the other challenge...
So you're at a stage where you have something that you're working to improve and add new features?
Of course we are. Then on the side of membership, is we want people to pay at their convenience, even in their homes, using whatever system, either mobile, either bank, or whichever. So we are also trying to negotiate with the service, mobile service providers, MTN, Airtel, and what, so that we can configure. If someone pays, then it becomes easy. They give us an account. Already we are through with MTN, where they are giving us an account. Whoever pays, then money comes to that account, and there is some people in finance that will be controlling it, and we see how much. So we are sure, but slow and steady, that by July, this coming month, we are launching it officially, and we will be good to go. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you. So lots to learn in there. So I think for anyone who might be here a little bit stuck, or if any of that again kind of resonates, then please let's have a conversation. There's some really interesting stuff in there. I don't know if our virtual people are back with us. If we can just get them back as soon as, yeah.
Together to go and volunteer, and they've just been doing it.
So what I would like to do is we'll just kind of wrap this up briefly. Our virtual colleagues will come back maybe with a bit of feedback as to how the personas have worked out, and then we'll move to the last stage of our session. Okay, so I'll ramble for a little bit more whilst our virtual people come back in the room. So we had 3 more national societies. Italian Red Cross had already kind of described that they were potentially a little bit stuck. Hong Kong Red Cross here, hello, and the Honduran Red Cross as well. Hello there. So is there anything in particular that you're stalled, you're stuck with?
So in Hong Kong, we have a volunteer management system that has been settled for long years, but we actually is starting to find that the system is not very user-friendly. Like, we have so many information there, but both the staff and volunteers don't know how to navigate the website, so it's kind of hard for us to find useful information in a sea of information. So yeah, that's basically our problem, and we are finding solutions to see how to trim down the information and let us make that technology become a tool to increase our efficiency instead of decreasing the efficiency. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, excellent. Okay, our virtual colleagues are back with us. Hello again. So I'm not quite sure how, but if there's any way of getting us any feedback from the persona sessions, maybe start with our YouTube folk.
Okay, so on the YouTube platform, the feedback that we are getting a lot is, I want to volunteer, but I don't want access. That's persona 2, and persona 4. I just don't want. So maybe just throw it back to the team to give us highlights on the challenges that they face under these personas, or what are the solutions before we give ours.
Okay, no problem. So yeah, maybe just to have I put that up here? I possibly haven't. Oh, it is there. So there were 2 particular personas that we knew would be interesting. So one persona is somebody who just doesn't want to engage. not interested. You can give me the fanciest system in the world, and I won't get involved in it. So we wanted to explore that persona in particular and see if that was something that you're experiencing, how national societies are getting around that. Oh, they're up on the screen there, thanks. And there's Elsie's work again, which is great. So we had these 4 personas, and the last 3 were very interesting to us. So I do want to be involved, but I don't have the skills. I do want to be involved, but I don't have the access. And then the very last one is no thanks. And we have a lot of those in the British Red Cross. It makes our jobs really fun. And I'm sure that there are elements of that you experience as well. So is there any feedback from those particular personas?
Yeah, sorry, they're writing frantically, but I think it's I can see this.
Type faster!
Yeah, if you can hear us, England, type faster. A lot of feedback was fear of the unknown and resistance to change. So I think Persona 4, so quite a few of them recognize Persona 4. Older generations, a sort of a lack or a fear of willingness to engage. Finding digital platforms a little bit overwhelming, maybe just not understanding the language used, feeling inadequate with technical capability. So it's quite strong language, but very relatable.
Yeah.
So, I think Persona 2 and 3, so the ones, people who feel that they lack the skills or don't have the access. So sorry, I'm just reading another one.
No, that's okay.
Australia, we've got some feedback, says users, other volunteers, could you communicate with people who are struggling with tech, like peer support?
Yeah.
So that's...
we've had that. We've had that, yeah.
Thanks.
Excellent,
if
thank you.
more comes in, I'll wave frantically.
Yeah, great stuff. No, some good things in there. How was that with YouTube as well? Is it similar?
The 2 questions, I don't want it at all. I don't
Okay.
have this. And I don't have access.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were there any particular comments that came through that were different to the...
Yes, so the different comments were, we need enough training skills to empower volunteers and supercharge volunteering. And another comment from Burundi Red Cross. There's an interesting comment, I've used personas during human-centered design.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other ones were just, I don't want to do this, I don't have access, but yeah.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. I'm sure there's some way of kind of capturing all of that and sharing it so you can see all of the things that were kind of being fed back. I guess there are a couple of things here just to kind of bring this all together. So the importance of personas, I guess we can't understate. It's really, really important to us. And talking about those different groups of people, their wants and needs and fears, and the things that might get in the way for them to use your product, you have to examine and continuously examine so that you build the right thing for them. I think I was hearing earlier about the importance, I think you were saying earlier about the importance of having their voice feed into how the system will work. You do that through personas, obviously not with that 4th one, they're not going to engage, but the others will certainly give you enough feedback, I think, to make sure that you continuously improve your product and it meets the needs of the users. That will change over time. So that's why we keep in touch with our user groups. That idea of having volunteers, peer support of the volunteers is really powerful. I can stand in front of anyone in the British Red Cross, all of our volunteers, and it won't mean as much as a volunteer stood next to me saying, this is what it means to me. This is how it's benefited me. So getting some of those really good allies on side, bringing them into your team, getting them engaged, getting them more familiar with how you, with the product and with how you're approaching it is really, really, really powerful stuff. Any last minute personas things?
Very, very similar. Just,
okay.
generational gap.
Okay.
And lots of people are really keen, lots of people are really keen to learn, but I think it's just that next step, that guiding them through to that next step. So, thank you everyone for the feedback. I'm just speaking to England now because I know they've been frantically writing, so thanks guys.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. So we'll find a way of getting all this feedback together and getting that to you. As to our session in the room, so we've got our post-it notes at various stages. If we can flip the presentation on the screen back to ours, that would be helpful, thank you. I don't want to see myself. So we kind of know a few things here as we've been on this journey together. So what we can kind of summarize from the post-it notes is that most of us have started, sometimes restarted, but we are well on our way. And I think what we'd like to focus on in the last part of this session is kind of how to iterate, you know, how to make things better, what to do with those next steps. And in particular, when we launched in the British Red Cross, we then had a lot of interested people asking for things to change all the time. So we had to develop a way of managing that. So we wanted to talk to you about the very last stage. One moment while I quickly, there we go. These essential, what we think are essential ingredients. So no matter where you are on these flip charts, we think this still holds true. And we have made enough mistakes and tested this methodology. And a lot of it we've talked about in other sessions. This is not rocket science, I don't think, but it works for us. So any change at all starts with this. Define the business problem. Don't come to our team and say, can you please give us some data? Don't come to our team and say, can you change this feature? Tell us what the problem is, and we will help find the right solution for you. If somebody does come and ask for a particular thing, we drag them right back to, no, tell us the problem. We need to know what the problem is. It doesn't need to be massively detailed, but we need to know that what we're going to commit, our time and our energy, is for the right reasons. Because how many times have we made a change only to find it's not actually addressed what has been asked? So this just helps make sure that we're starting from the right stage. And is it the right time to do it? So we have a question we ask ourselves: is the business ready to take on this change? Because sometimes timing is everything. So it might be another few months, that will be a better time. So we ask ourselves those questions, and let's get that business problem documented. Then we can move on to capturing the requirements and what we call the user stories, and I'm sure a lot of you have come across this term as well. So look at it from the voice of the user. Look at it from their eyes. What is it that they want to see and feel? This can be a volunteer, it can be a volunteer manager, it can be a senior manager, it doesn't matter. Trying to get their story documented is also very important. We're trying to find out why we're doing something before we look at what. So we're doing all this work up front before we've even pushed any buttons, so to speak. Once we have that, we then look at a prioritization. We can't do everything all at once, and shouldn't do everything all at once. So where does it fit in our already very busy schedule? Is it more important than thing A? Is it more important than thing B? How do we assess that? So we have a series of criteria that we use to look at how important this particular business problem is, and should we adopt it now, or do we say to the person who requested this, we can't do this yet, we've got other priorities. They're fun conversations too. And what that means then is that we're dealing with the things that have the biggest impact. We're not dealing with the things where the person has the loudest voice. That's taken a long time to get to that stage. And what we're trying to make sure is that we're consistent in that approach, and that we're transparent so that you know if I'm saying we're not doing that yet, you know why. We're transparent about our process, about that criteria, and where you fit in your prioritization. And it's not just my decision. We have a whole series of things that we have used to assess your thing. We've not even made a change yet. We're still just deciding what we're doing and when it's going to happen. Then we can move to the design phase. We've agreed that what it is, we've agreed who it affects, we've looked at our personas, we've got some requirements, we've prioritized it, and then we can start looking at the design. What are our options? There may only be one option. There may be a few, and we frame that story. So we say this option is the best option to meet those requirements and address that business problem. Then we can commit. So throughout this whole process, what we will be asked on a daily basis is when. When will it be delivered? When can I have it? When? We can't tell them. We can't tell them until that last point, when we commit. It's futile to do it otherwise, because we don't know what we're building. So until we say, we know it's a priority, we know what the business problem is, we've got a design, this is how long it will take. So at that point, that's when we start to build, and that's when we look at the time scale it's going to take. Yes, Jakob, you had a very quick question there.
Maybe if you can elaborate a bit, because I think it's a challenge working with minimum viable products with volunteers, because they are expecting a product that it's actually going to work. Then I mean, that kind of way of working, I understand why, but I think it's challenging with interacting with volunteers that's the users of the system and present them with a minimum viable product.
Thank you. I will do that, and I'll use an example that we have at the moment to kind of bring that to life a little bit. So, minimum viable product is the least amount of change you can get away with, the least amount of change needed to address that business problem. So as part of this, maybe running alongside all of this is our communications and our engagement with volunteers. So they've been involved in those user stories and requirements. They've been involved with their voice, and when we've designed it and we've looked at the options, they've understood that actually when we get to that point, this is what we're going to release first. Then we might go right the way through the cycle again, and we're going to iterate and iterate and iterate. So you might get minimum viable product to start with, then we'll look at future iterations. Now they'll have to go through a prioritization as well. And I think being that consistent and transparent and getting the volunteer and the volunteer manager to understand that there is a process here, and again, we can't do everything all at once, that we will start, but part of that commitment is we won't stop until everything is addressed. We just can't tell you how long that might take. The example that instantly came to mind when you asked that question, Jakob, is single sign-on. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with some form of single sign-on. So our volunteers access the volunteer management system, the learning platform. We have a different platform to claim expenses so that they can be recompensed. Each one of those, different login. And it's really difficult to navigate through all of those. You can't remember which password's which. If you use a different email address, it all becomes a bit of a mess. The single sign-on solution has been through this process, and we've not yet got to the point where it's at minimum viable product, but as part of the prioritization process is what they're doing now good enough? Will it manage? Will it be okay? So is 3 logins okay? For the majority of users, it seemed to be okay. But when we get to single sign-on, we'll think about what are the biggest areas, the biggest systems that are most used where single sign-on will have that effect. They will not get it across all of the systems to start with, just the key ones. And we can use data to help drive that decision, because we'll look at the amount of activity that's involved. And we think, based on the data we're seeing, it will be the volunteer management system and the learning platform that will be our minimum viable product. Then we'll go back around and we'll add system C, system D, system E, but that's where we'll start. Volunteers are part of that conversation. Volunteers are part of the prioritization process, so we get to the point where MVP, they understand that that's why we're doing what we're doing. Last things, before we can maybe have a few more questions. Our reflections, if you like, over the last few years, we've got a few things that I think we hold dear to our heart, and that as we've been hearing other sessions and speaking to other people over the last day and a half, have really kind of emphasized some of these points. Change is constant. It's always happening. There's never a good time. We launched our volunteer management system at the start of a pandemic. Was that a good idea? We'll never know. But this is where we are. So we live with constant change, and we need to be careful when we're making changes, in and amongst all of these other changes, that we're doing it for the right reason. Lots and lots of people making changes all the time. Let's not feed into that same chaotic circle as we see it. Let's try and make sure that when we take those steps forwards, we're doing it for the right reasons. Change takes a long time. You put these systems in and it can take a long time. We need to have a bit of patience and a bit of faith that you know it will be. We have so many times over the last few years just gone, this isn't right, it's not working, we need to start again, we need to change all of this. But there is a little bit of kind of trying to hold fast a little bit and trying to really make sure that you're continuing to do things for the right reasons, and you're having those conversations and getting good feedback from your users, but we do need to have some patience. We like to try and do this. It doesn't always work, but we like to do things well, not quickly. And those two can be done, can be the same, but quite often, if you do things quickly, it's at the risk of other things. So at the forefront of our mind always is, how do we do this well? How do we deliver this feature for that customer, for that business problem? And try and take opinion out of it. So let's use data to tell us whether something is right or wrong, not this loud voice in the room. And again, that's very, very difficult to do. I'm not saying we've got this right. We've certainly had some very interesting conversations with people, but we try and get data to back up our decisions so that we can be consistent. I don't think anyone would necessarily disagree with that, but challenging yourself all the time. Have we got the user in here? Is it right? Is it right? We try and do that all the time. This really struck us with the case study and with some recent conversations, is that volunteers know what this should be, and they're way ahead of us. And there's a perception, I think, in the British Red Cross is that staff know best. We're paid to do this. We know what we're doing. We don't need, we'll tell the volunteers how this should work. They're miles ahead. They're miles ahead. This is how it should be. So bringing that into your design, bringing that into your, the voice and bringing that into the personas, it's really, really important. And as we saw in the case study earlier when Lotte went through, the fact that they're using our products and our tools in innovative ways, because we've done all that hard work to lay those foundations, and our users can just now, they can be quite free, create things, manage their own events. And if they get it wrong, we're here to help. Otherwise, they can use the products, and we really like that. And then we can share those case studies with our Persona 4, with those who say, no thanks, not for me. Yeah, but your colleague has just done this. Look at this fantastic work. Look how it helped them. You too can benefit from that. And that's, again, really powerful to have that kind of voice in the room. And then You know, we'll always have Persona 4. We'll always have those who maybe get it later. We'll even have some who will never shift. That's people, isn't it? So don't enter into this, that's our mantra, with the view that we're going to please everybody. We're not. And that's not what we're in the business of doing. We're in the business of solving business problems. And sometimes that won't be to everybody's liking. So there's just a bit of a reminder here for us that everybody's different. We'll try and work with different personas, and some will take a little longer, and that's fine, because change takes a long time. We have to be patient. That's the end of our little thing. We've a few minutes left, so we have a chance for any questions, any reflections. Otherwise, we can. We do have some questions. This is the last slide.
The previous.
Oh, the previous. Of course. There we go.
Thank you. So my question goes to Kenya Red Cross. Yeah, there was a question you talked about 6 months retainership of volunteering, something like that. So that's what I want to know about, like if you could give us more details.
Thank you for that question. So what happened in Kenya Red Cross, we sit in the technical committee with the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection. So I was part of that team drafting the bill for volunteerism that needed to be legislated by Parliament before it's enacted. So what we realized is the different categories of volunteerism. So there's volunteers, there's interns, there's social workers. So for us not to fall into the trap of paying taxes, if I'm allowed to say that, we need to let go of volunteers for a while, for a month, and then they come back. Because we find that some volunteers are usually given back their allowances. Whatever they've used, we usually reimburse them. Sometimes it goes over beyond the cap of employment and salaries. So to ensure that we don't fall into that, we let them go, then they come back. So it also helps us have a retention or rotation for all our volunteers. Yeah? Thank you. Yeah, there you go.
For us, what we have done, like my colleague from Kenya says, we have factored it into the system. The moment you clock 6 months, the system takes you off. We don't want to wait because sometimes human error can forget. So in this system, we have made it clear 6 months, the system will knock you off. Someone will come, maybe after you rest 1 month or 2 months, then you can come back. Because I know if you go beyond, then the revenue authority will come, they need their tax. Somebody is getting a salary. So tax-free, this is in-house.
They're very different user requirements to ours, I would say. Thank you. Ajmal, you have a question?
Yeah, not a question, just thank you. I think it was a great session. I'm really happy to see all these people here. Just for your information, I don't know how many of you have heard about the Volunteering Alliance before. Within the Volunteering Alliance, we have different, let's say, technical teams or working groups or whatever on very specific topic, and we had one on volunteer data management system. And I think we have a lot of knowledge over here, and I would like to invite people who are interested to just sign up to be part of the Alliance to learn a little bit more about what we're doing on volunteer data management system. There's the British Red Cross, there's Kenya Red Cross, there's Spanish Red Cross, a lot of national societies in that working group, and it's really about sharing the knowledge, getting the experience from each other, and so on and so forth. So I invite you to just maybe write down your email if you're interested on the flip chart, and we'll get in touch with you. But thank you very much again.
No problem. Thank you, Ajmal. Yeah, and I think just briefly adding to that is that clearly we're not alone. I could break into song there. I'm not going to. But we're here to support each other. And I think pretty much You can say that if you're encountering a problem, you're not sure how to resolve it. The answer is in this room. We know it, and we're just sharing bits of this that you might find useful. And it would be great to have, you know, your thoughts and your reflections and your lessons all feeding into this thing, because we can do it. We don't need these big multi-billion-pound technology firms to tell us how it's all going to work. We know how it's going to work, and volunteers know how it's going to work. So let's really harness that and be quite brave in asking, you know, and saying this isn't working for us. How can we do this? How can we have a conversation? So if we can build this community of people who have volunteer management systems and wanting to do more, and how did you do this? And we've just found that. That'd be a beautiful thing, I think.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm from Kenya Red Cross. I'm a volunteer. So my question goes to any society which is in this room. When we talk of data and managing data and the systems that volunteers, we input our data, it goes a long way. We have to put our personal details like our identification number and all that. So has it ever happened to any of the society in the room that maybe the system was hacked and the information was leaked to the people, and maybe that could be a contribution in which some of the volunteers are not ready to like accept the systems? And if it has ever happened, how did the society like take up that? And if any, it happens in another society, how best could they work on it? Thank you.
Great question. Anyone like to answer that?
Thank you. Simone, from Italian Cross. In Italy, we used to manage data, and as national coordinator for volunteering analysis report, we do all these things. We manage all the things, all the data we gather with Gaia and other systems and database that we had in our national society, and we try to produce a report, an annual report on our activity. This is another report on our volunteering and other kinds of report we can produce with those kinds of data. But we shared this report with all the volunteers involved in some kind of role in the national society, and we try to get their feedbacks to improve our database, their opinion, their story about the use of the data they did in past years, and we are trying to improve our report and all the things we can give them to improve their decision making with data. I don't know if I answered back your question. Let me know.
Frank, yes.
Thank you. Is it working? Yeah. This is what I put in my opening statement. I mean, this is all great, but we must not forget the data protection. And I'm looking at the EU societies, Italian Red Cross, Swedish Red Cross. You are under the GDPR, which is a very, very tough data protection law. And it is even potentially going into third countries. I'm not aware, we as a federation have not been informed about data breaches of data volunteer systems. The ICRC, that was under the Restoring Family Links, that was a massive data breach, and they had to apply the GDPR rules there, because it was lots of national societies sitting in the European Union, which were under threat here, and you have to comply very much with the rules in there, informing every individual, telling them your data has been breached. And I think in all this, I think this has to be factored in, not only in the EU, in any other societies, so the data protection. But, and this is what I also said, is this must not lead to the way I said, I'm not doing this. I know smaller associations in Germany have said, the risk is too big for us. We cannot do it. But I think that is the wrong answer. I think, and this is where it is also about this room and connecting, is to find joint solutions, to find joint approaches, and to inform that a data breach has happened. Also internally, it's nothing bad happened, but I think the learning exercise around data breaches is more valuable than hiding it away. If I have the mic, just one thing also important. In one of your first slides, I think it was the number one category, you know, you have a business plan or whatever. We in the Federation, we are supporting also financially the data, the transfer into data, volunteer data management systems. Through the CBF, the Capacity Building Fund, there's a specific clause in there for digitalization, but also for volunteering. So these two together are areas of where your societies can tap into the financial support of this. And I think this is very important. We've just increased the threshold from 50,000 to 100,000. So, and that can be quite a good sum to kickstart something. Secondly, what Ajmal just said, sorry, Ajmal just said in terms of the approaches of collecting our joint knowledge and finding joint solutions and sharing problems and getting these things together, I think that is key in here. We in the Secretariat, as I said, we are prioritizing this. In our department, NSDS, we are prioritizing the data volunteer management and looking also in the various systems and to bring potentially 1 or 2 or 3 systems at scale so that we are sure they are managed, they can be reached out. There is expertise around these systems of helping this, because I think the worst what we've seen here is if you're starting alone on this. So the 3 takeaways, you have to take data protection into account, but it should not be a reason for stopping it. The CBF is there to help you in this, anytime, 24/7. You know, you just need to fill out the application and you get very quickly the money. And thirdly, help us also to identify what is the good system, how can we bring these systems at scale and have joint learnings. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Frank. Okay, so we're going to wrap up. Thank you very, very much, everybody, for your input, for your attention, for getting involved. Thank you so much. That's been really great. We've very much enjoyed it. Thank you to our YouTube moderators. Thank you guys. Thank you to our media team who've helped manage this whole chaos. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, everybody. And come and see us throughout the next day and a half if you have any more questions. I've put if you want to share your contacts, if you want to find out more, please put your details up here or come and speak to us, and look forward to seeing you all over the next day and a half. Thank you, everybody.
It's been so great to have you here.